found all of those aspects. Now, at the time, he didn't know yet about the negative impact of meat animal proteins, right? He did know that certain things made you fatter, like saturated fat, like dairy, egg yolks, stuff like that. But he still thought that lean proteins would be a good idea for muscle building. He's since proven that you can build more muscle on half the protein on a plant-based diet using his protocol. But at the time, he thought you needed it. Now, I've been a vegetarian since I was 12 because I liked animals, right? That was the only reason. But I ate terribly. I ate the best diet to be overweight and sick, which is called hospital food. And so I was eating that. And this is how I got into. Now, listen, I wasn't obese, but I used to work out. And I still didn't have a body that felt like I worked out. That's just a buddy of ours. Tom knows him, it's fine. But, at the time, I was like, I was going to the gym, I'm eating hospital food, and I'm like soft. I'm overweight. It's not what I wanted, right? And so I asked him to put me on a program, and he had to take the meat out because I wasn't going to eat it anyway. So he made the first version of his program that was plant-based. And what happened is in 3.5 months, I went from a size 11 to a size 3. I'll show you the picture. Here's us at our wedding 3.5 months later. And for the first time since I was 16 years old, I'd been sick for 12 years straight. 12 years straight with positive labs and markers for lupus, positive symptoms for lupus, migraines, pains, and rashes. For the first time in 12 years, I had negative labs for lupus. So something happened where we created this fast metabolism, and I know he looked great too. We created this fast metabolism, and that also seemed to equal health. Now, at the time, I was just a doctor that just graduated medical school, and I didn't realize that the reason I was better was my nutrition, because after all that training, if nutrition mattered, they would have told us, right? Right? Guess what? No, nutrition never came up. So even though I was better for the first time in my life, I thought, I didn't know why. Oh, it's a weird remission. In fact, they thought it was a lab mistake. So they sent me back to get my labs retaken, and they were negative. And my cholesterol, which had been high since I was 21, and my doctor said it was just genetic, blame your parents, direct quote. My cholesterol was 155, right? And my blood clot antibodies were gone. Everything was gone. Nobody knew why. And we just shrugged and said, maybe it's luck, maybe it's love. However, I'd been in love with him now for 1.5 years. And my labs were still the same. It wasn't until I changed my diet that they changed. But you know what? I was busy, stuff to do. And we were so happy to be in love and getting married that we just went on with our life. We didn't realize that it was the food until after I did the impossible. After 4 years of being healthy, we went ahead and did get pregnant. And even though the doctors freaked out and said, this is going to bring the lupus back, here's my labs right before I got pregnant, not before I get pregnant, sorry, right before I changed my diet. There's my clotting antibodies, there's my lupus antibodies, all positive. That's in quote remissions. And here I am pregnant, negative for all clotting antibodies. So they wanted me to take blood thinners, but I'm like, for what? I don't have any antibodies, right? And then same thing, there's my ANAs positive and then my ANAs negative. So even though I was pregnant, I still had no lupus. And that's when we realized what had happened at that point. We had our beautiful son, Solomon, and this was 9 days after I gave birth. I was back to my weight before I had given birth, before I gotten pregnant. So my husband did this photo shoot that you're looking at right now. He did front, side, and back. I'm not going to make you look at all that. But he goes, look, you proved my metabolism theory that a fast metabolism should be able to return back to the optimal state as quickly as possible. But what we also realized was fast metabolism is not just about whether or not you have a six-pack. Fast metabolism is whether or not your cells can react in real time to what you needed to do. I was able to get pregnant, gain the weight I needed for my pregnancy, have a healthy birth, be back to my pre-pregnancy weight 9 days later without doing anything. I was just nursing, eating, and sleeping, right? And I was lupus-free still. And I can tell you right now, I'm sitting here at 47, and it's just about 19 years that I've been lupus-free, in spite of having 2 kids, in spite of everything that's ever happened to me, everything I've done from there. I have never had a relapse. And it's not just me. I could do this all day. This is Julie. She did my 4-week rapid recovery program, and she was so exhausted. When we met, she was anxious and pain, exhausted. She could barely take care of her kids. She couldn't work. She did 4 weeks rapid recovery, and after 28 days, she had great energy. Her daily anxiety was gone. Her stress was gone. And she got so much better that a couple months later, her rheumatologist fired her, and she started 2 new businesses in addition to running around with her kids. And Then she goes and checks her thyroid, which also was a problem for her in addition to the mixed connective tissue disease. And she got a text from her doctor. Didn't she used to be hypothyroid? Yeah, her thyroid healed too, right? 4 weeks. This is someone who just followed my free content because my husband and I, we've given our protocols away for free. I'm doing this talk right now, 2 hours of my day for free, right? I do this all the time for free because I want people to get better and I want it to be clear. There's no money behind this. This is for you because it works, right? This woman had Graves' disease followed me for free and she was able to already reduce her antibodies and get rid of the other antibodies on her own, following our protocol. This was the first client I ever had for working with in this way and in health and nutrition. This was him on the left on the best medicines could offer. Lupus, scleroderma, and Sjogren's, in and out of the ICU since he was 14. This is him only after 6 weeks. All of this healed. This was on medicines. This was him coming off of medicines, okay? Same thing was happening to his hands. Look away if you got problems with it, but scleroderma will harden your skin so much that if you bend your knuckle, it opens up and you can't heal it. And this was so painful, the doctors told him the only thing they could do was amputate his fingers. And yet, here's on my protocol, off medications, everything heals. That was him off his medications. He went from living at home because nobody would hire him because they couldn't look at him to not only having a job, but those fingers they were going to amputate has created three-dimensional art, and he's won art competitions in Los Angeles galleries. And that's what my work is about. It's about taking someone who is sick and suffering and giving them the tools they need to live their dreams and give their gifts. That is what my job is. And that is what I dream of doing. And even at his job, they call him the rabbit. So instead of a cake, they gave him carrots for his birthday. This is a nurse. I have a lot of doctors, nurses, and pharmaceutical reps that come and see me for help. I'm actually doing rapid recovery right now with a pharmaceutical researcher. And I'm always honored when they choose me because they do it because they know when they hear me speak that I understand the science. I'm not talking woo-woo, although I'm good for whatever works for you. I know the science of nutrition and disease reversal. And so I'm always happy to see, when healthcare providers come to me. Now, why do they come to me? Because guess what? When your healthcare provider gets sick, they Google too, even though they yell at you for doing it. So Nurse Peggy, rheumatoid arthritis, this is what she looked like when she joined my 6-week rapid recovery group. So rapid recovery is just a program where I work with people every single day to make sure every aspect of their life and their diet becomes anti-inflammatory and they get better. I obsessively breathe on you so you can feel my breath on your neck to make sure you get better. Look at the size of this poor, swollen, painful wrist. This is her at the end. She couldn't even bend it at the beginning. 6 weeks later, all right? Another one, Genie, 6 weeks, lupus gone, and her clotting antibodies gone. And that was at 70. This woman followed me for free online. This is her on medicines. This is her just on my protocol. Look at that, less than 3 weeks. Nothing else helped her medically, and the nutrition did. She just sent me that. Mariana, she did my rapid recovery group because she had such bad lupus in her brain. She was having seizures all day long. This is her lupus antibody. She came to me right after the ICU, lupus antibody over 3,000. And then she did 6 weeks in my group. She decided to stay another round, down to 84. This is what the nutrition does. The antibodies are dying off, and she stopped having seizures. She was having 3-4 seizures a day. She stopped having seizures after the first week. This is someone who did my rapid recovery group. I just was in touch with her. She did my group back in 2018, and she's still doing great. So this woman, she's been sick for so long that her doctors have been following her for almost 10 years, and they could not believe that her liver enzymes were normal, her inflammation from her eye that she'd had for 10 years was gone. All these things were gone in 6 weeks, and she'd been seeing these doctors 10 years, and they couldn't help her. And even more fun was that her son, who had lupus, was following along with her when she was in my rapid recovery group, and his lupus went away. And I just texted her yesterday, and he's still lupus-free off all medication, and he just ate what mom ate while she was in my group. And her doctor was so excited because he'd been seeing her since she was 18 that he wanted me to teach grand rounds. Now, it was during COVID, so I didn't do it, but maybe we can reconnect on that. This is someone else followed me online, said goodbye to MS. Look at her go. She just followed my book, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease. Here's another person, MS. Not only do I see improvement of their symptoms, but the lesions on their brain MRIs will go away. All right, very, very important. This is another teacher who did my group. She was told she was never going to be able to walk again. This is her at the end of the 6-week group. It was a video, but I never take risks on videos anymore in live presentations, but that was her showing off her walking at the end. These are 6-week results, my friends. I'm not talking about something that will just, try it for a year and see if you feel better. These are people I work with every day, and what their results typically are at the end of the first month, month and a half. Jackie, oh my God, my Jackie, she did my rapid recovery group. Lupus, mixed connective tissue disease. She had bullous pemphigoid disease. She was so disabled. She had learned about her program, but had never been able to get herself to stay on plan. And she decided to do it to fight for her life and her grandkids. And by the second week, she was able to use her hands in a way that she had never been able to for years. And her husband came home at the end of the second week and found her moving furniture when she couldn't even hold a pencil when she started. That's how exciting it was. So her mouth ulcers went away next, then the blisters that stopped her from being able to wear shoes. And in the final meeting, her husband actually joined with her, and he was crying in the final meeting. She was showing off holding the pencil with all of these things better. It was absolutely incredible. She posted in Smoothie Short, our free group, a while later, just to show off, look at her, showing off how she could jump around and have fun with her grandkid, which was really all she wanted to do. She was considered lupus free. This is what I live for now. This for me is the reason why I've been sick and what my job is to do now for others. I've treated mystery diseases. This doctor couldn't walk without taking prednisone. She did she did appointments with me, and then she didn't need prednisone anymore, and she could walk again. And because she was the head of the internal medicine department, she said she was going to give my book to all of her residents. I've helped children. This child had lupus in her lungs, her heart, and her kidneys. She was a code blue. They had to bring her back to life. And I worked with her and her mom said I could share the texts. Heart back to normal, martial arts, kidney was back to normal within a couple of weeks. She graduated high school as a straight A student, and she doesn't let me show her face anymore, but amazing recovery to be able to continue the rest of her life that way. I've treated a lot of kids. It works for HPV, reversed abnormal pap smears, reversed cervical dysplasia, and of course, it's great for weight loss as well. The metabolism part does work. This is someone I found on YouTube, got rid of her endometriosis. This is a guy I met at the gym who got rid of his food allergies. This is Bernard, who in 5 weeks completely eliminated glaucoma, completely gone after 5 weeks, as well as his diabetes. Peripheral neuropathy from chemotherapy. This is someone who's able to heal that within 6 weeks and after doing rapid recovery. And this one, I want to tell this little story before I get to the science. I want to inspire you and then show you the science because I got to convince you to listen to it, right? So Rachel, she did my 4-week rapid recovery program because she had lupus, and her lupus was so severe that when she had her first child, she had to stay in the hospital. She had a miscarriage, got sick again, and so she was pregnant and terrified, and she felt bad. She'd already started her maternity leave because she was so sick. She had to stay home and lay on her couch. Well, by the end of the 4 weeks, she was actually teaching her daughter how to fly a kite running through a park at the end of the 4 weeks, right before she had her C-section. And she also couldn't tolerate any sunlight before, and she was able to tolerate sunlight. So at the end of 4 weeks, she had a healthy delivery. She didn't have any lupus or Sjogren's symptoms and has not had any since then, okay? Now, there's her lupus rash. You can see her skin is clear. But also, since the pandemic, she's had 2 kids since then, no relapse. Okay. Now, after this happened, her mother-in-law got really sick. So this is Pearl. Pearl was sick in the hospital. And at the time that she was in the hospital, she was now told that she had her final heart attack. Her husband was called. So Rachel's husband got a phone call and said, your mom had a fatal heart attack. She's still alive, but you need to come say goodbye. At the time, she'd had 25 heart attacks. She'd had 20 angiograms. She'd had 10 stents. Her first heart attack was at 41. She was diagnosed with chronic heart failure 2 years prior. She was type 2 diabetic, insulin dependent, had been diagnosed with diabetes at 38, okay, and had been using insulin since 92. And so she had her fatal, what they said was the biggest heart attack. And so he flew out to say goodbye, and that his mom's heart was too sick to heal. Now he had just watched his wife heal from autoimmune disease. He had just watched Rachel do this. She just had the baby. So he brought the blender to the hospital, gave his mother nothing but my green smoothie recipe. And 5 days later, she walked out of the hospital. And that was back in 2017. All right. So only 1 year later, she was doing great. She was off her cholesterol meds. She had minimized any insulin use. Her blood sugars were normal. No more chest pain, no heart symptoms at all. massive weight loss. This was her a year later. Again, that's 2017. That's 2018. This was her recently, still enjoying her grandkids and perfectly healthy and slim. Look at her. So now it's the wife, it's his mother. And then what happens? Nir gets sick. And I said, Nir, what are you doing? He said, I've been so stressed about my mom and my wife that I've been eating like garbage. So we put him on the same program. And I said, listen, first of all, it's time to get into some therapy. You can relax. Your mom is okay. Your wife is okay, but you are in danger and they need you. And, you know, we worked on the emotions and crying and like letting himself feel, got him on track. And what happened was he listened to me, and you can see this one is eating what she's eating, right? He was eating something else at school where he's a teacher. Well, only 3 weeks later, texting me, I feel like a new person, working out 3 times a week, working on himself, reduced his medicines in half already in 3 weeks. And his fatty liver was already gone. 3 weeks later, right? So it was less than a month. He'd had chronic fatty liver for years and nobody knew why. And you know what? Didn't matter. And on top of that, 6 weeks later, we checked, not even a hint of diabetes, completely gone. This is the kind of the time frame of the results when you optimize nutrition. So anytime you change your diet for the better, you're going to get some good results. When you optimize nutrition, the way we teach for cellular recovery, the body can do amazing things in rapid time. And there he was right after he finished. And this is why I love to tell that story, because these are their kids. All right. So this was the guy that was in her belly when she was pregnant. This was her daughter that was already here. And here's the newer one. So cute. And the cool thing about this, and what I want all of you to realize, is when you do what's right for you, you start a domino effect that can change things for everybody. And in this family, these kids have the genes for autoimmune disease and heart failure and diabetes and liver failure. They have all of those genes, but the diseases stop here because these kids eat a hyper-nourishing plant-based diet, and they are healthy and brilliant and wonderful kids that don't have to be afraid of illness. And that is where the power is. This is a generation of children that is the sickest we've ever seen. They live on ultra-processed foods. They are already getting diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune diseases as small children that we used to only see in adults. We can do something better for them, and I think we owe it to them to do so. Now, I have published what I've done. This is in reversing kidney failure, getting someone off the transplant list. This is my newest research that was just published, a case series where people, the 3 women with lupus and Sjogren's combined, highly symptomatic on medication. All 3 of them were asymptomatic within 2 to 6 weeks. And all 3 of them have remained asymptomatic on my step down plan for 3 years, 6 years, and 7 years with no relapse. So there's ways to get that. And people have heard of me at this point. I really just wanted to work with the homeless. I never had any desire to be on camera, actually. Yes, I'm an only child, but no, I just wanted to quietly work with the homeless until I felt like I needed to teach this. And so I have been, people have sought me out. It has grown completely naturally. I've never, promoted or paid for followers or any of that stuff. I just do things that work and people share it. And it's just organically grown from me having 100 followers to me now having over 100,000, which just blows my mind just by doing the work. So I've been in the movies and on TV, and I'm on the news constantly. I actually just turned down a news bit for today because I had to be here. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't come on, but they'll call me if they need any health stuff, plant-based news. And if a lot of people like to go to T. Colin Campbell's eCornell course to learn more. And so I'm their autoimmune professor. And I have now been on the health advisory board for Forbes for 2 years now. So I get to medically approve research articles and give feedback when they make mistakes. And I always make sure those articles that I edit get information about how nutrition and health can affect those diseases that the author is writing about. And all this really means to me is my message is getting mainstream. I love being able to teach in places like this, but truthfully, most people out there are not coming to conferences like this. They are not looking online. They're listening to their doctor and they are hopeless because of it. And so all this means to me is my message is getting out to the people who need it. And that's what matters to me most. I want it to be that people just understand how to eat for their health so they don't have to lose their own life, and that people don't have to lose the people they love unnecessarily because they didn't know. And that's what that means to me. Now, I do teach a lot of this. One of the things that I love getting out there is making connections between what's going on in research and what we've been teaching, right? So there was Crick Institute was trying to do research to figure out why autoimmune diseases have been rising and spreading into areas of the world that never existed in before over the past 40 years. And they thought maybe there's a DNA cause, maybe we're mutating, right? Maybe. And then what it turned out is there's no change in our DNA, but the rise and spread of autoimmune diseases around the world, including things like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis in areas like the Middle East and Asia where it never used to be, was entirely connected to the rise and spread of autoimmune disease, right? On top of that, there was studies that showed that COVID was tied to how sick people got from COVID was entirely tied to what their diets were. And this was a really, really cool study. And what they found was, this was back in 2021 when things were still new and we didn't know what to do about COVID. They actually looked at, it was from Colombia, they studied almost 3,000 healthcare workers from 6 different countries. And what they looked at is, did they get sick from COVID? How sick did they get? And what did they eat? And did they identify as plant-based, pescatarian, high protein, or just like standard American diet? And they adjusted for all the other variables that can make you sick. And the results were really striking. So what they found is that people who followed what they called a plant-based diet had 73% lower odds of experiencing moderate to severe COVID-19 compared with others. 73% lower risk. That's not a small thing. Pescatarian diets, 59% lower risk. So, okay, better than most people, but not as good as if you take that fish out. I guess fish isn't so healthy after all, right? And people who ate high protein, low carb diets, 48% higher risk of moderate to severe infection. It was deadly. And one of my husband's good friends died of COVID in the first wave. And he was one of those really buff guys who looked super healthy, felt amazing. He was really successful and famous in the fitness industry. He died in that first wave, and he was on one of these type of diets, right? So that was a really striking thing that they found. I mean, 73% lower risk versus 48% higher risk if your meat is mostly meat versus all veg versus mostly veg. And so what they thought at the end of that study was, okay, conclusion is if your diet is rich in nutrient-dense foods, maybe that protects you. So since plants have nutrients and meat doesn't, maybe that's the issue, right? But what they didn't address, which is what I've been bringing to this when I talked about the study back then, is the deleterious or dangerous effects of meat. Why is it that if your diet's mostly meat, you die quickly from COVID? But if your diet is mostly plants, you're very protected, but just eating a little bit of meat, just fish, which some people don't think they're eating meat when they eat fish, but you know, fish is not a vegetable, right? So just eating a little bit of meat, boom, they lowered the risk. So they got the protection of the nutrition of the plants, but they still had a higher risk of COVID than the people who ate no meat at all. And I think that that was a really important thing that was not discussed in that article. And it shows what I've been doing for a long time is that I find that if people hypernourished, which I'm going to teach you what that is, and they still eat some meat, they tend to have much better health. But if they take the meat out, boom, does it skyrocket. You know, that gentleman that I showed you, David, who had the rashes on his face and the fingers, he was able to get symptom-free by doing my diet. And he was still taking medicines, but symptom-free and feeling great. And he only ate meat once a week. But he still had to take his medicines. Finally, after 2 years of that kind of remission, I got him to stop the meat entirely. Within 2 weeks, they took him off his meds. So again, there is, you know, if you minimize your meat intake, you're going to be much healthier. If you take it out, you're going to optimize your health. And that was an important part that was missing. There was also another study that was done by Harvard that found that healthy plant foods lower your COVID risk. In 2022, a Brazilian study, mostly plant-based diet, went to 39% lower rates of COVID-19. So it was repeated over and over. Now, the other thing that I loved with this group over, this is me on the news again, which I found it funny. They were interviewing me and they both wore smoothie green. That was really cool. I love these guys. They're really, really nice over at ABC. But what they also found from John Hopkins research is that there is an ingredient in cruciferous vegetables called sulforaphane that actually prevents COVID-19 and other viruses from replicating. So they found it decreased their ability to replicate by 50%, in half. And not just COVID, but flu viruses as well. And so they found that even if you already had an infection, if you took in the cruciferous vegetables, you could reduce that infection. And that's what we found. You know, I've worked through the pandemic in rapid recovery, healing autoimmune diseases, and people would be on my plan for their autoimmune disease, their whole family's sick with COVID, and they're not, even though they're immunosuppressed. So that was pretty amazing to see that. And now we're seeing some of the reasons why. They also found a decrease in the viral load in the lungs and upper respiratory tract and amount of lung injury compared to controls when they added this ingredient from cruciferous vegetables, and decreased inflammation in the lungs, which also I have found, I mean, I've helped people decrease their oxygen needs after being on a respirator from COVID. I've helped someone get off the lung transplant list with autoimmune disease in his lungs. And that's what we find is the lung inflammation comes down. So they found that, you know, just these ingredients, cruciferous vegetables, are also protective and can kill cancer cells. Very, very important. So, you know, it's one of the reasons why we're seeing now research that supports what we've been teaching for over a dozen years about the benefits of these certain types of foods in cellular repair, cellular function, and recovery from illness. It also has helped with long COVID. Everyone I've worked with long COVID has been able to fully reverse it and get their energy back and feel great again, usually within 3 weeks. So what do you want to learn from that? Well, healthy immune systems can do a few things. One, they can reverse diseases. Here I am. All right. It's been 19 years, no relapse. I've helped other people have many, many years. David, it's been over a decade, right, of no relapse. It can reverse diseases. It can fight diseases, killing cancer cells, killing viruses, and making sure they can't replicate, and helps you recover from disease, brings that inflammation down, lets you recover.